Welcome to Reflections, the podcast that biblically encourages, equips, and empowers women for apostolic life and service. Here's your host, Dr. Cindy Miller.
Caregiving, caring for the one who cared for you, is one of the most loving yet difficult seasons of life we may carry. Today's conversation is for the daughter who is exhausted, the woman who feels torn in every direction, and the caregiver who loves deeply but feels worn thin. Caregiving for aging parents can come over a period of time, but in some cases it's unexpected. It happens and you aren't planning for it. It changes everything. It changes your schedules, it changes relationships, it changes your body, and it does have an impact on your faith. And when the relationship is complicated or difficult, the weight can feel even heavier. So today I'm joined by Rachel Coltharp, a pastor's wife, mom, grandmother, caregiver, writer, homeschool mom. I mean, she's just so many roles. But she is, in addition to all of that, being the amazing person that she is also currently caring for her mom in her home. So together we're going to talk honestly about the privilege and we're going to talk about the pain of caregiving. So we all know it's true. Giving up so much of your own life for someone else, it's not easy. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to keep loving when it's hard and why caregivers were never, ever meant to do this alone. Some of you may have wondered, am I less of a Christian for feeling this overwhelmed, for having thoughts I don't want to admit to, for struggling to love well when I'm exhausted? Well, if you've ever wondered that, this episode is for you. Welcome, Rachel. I'm so glad you're here with me, with all the listeners.
Thank you. I'm grateful that you are giving me a chance to tell somebody maybe the things I wish that I had heard before
I
this journey
know.
started for me.
Isn't that the truth? And you know, this episode really came about because I was going through kind of my own situation in life with my mom and her health. She was on the decline, and you were having a mom with health declines, and we talked about this over a period of time, and one day we just kind of like, oh my goodness, we need to put this on the podcast, because if this is helping us, how much more could it possibly, if we could just share this with our listeners and bring them into this conversation. So I'm very, very happy. All of you who are listening, I'm glad you're here. Rachel, tell the listeners who may not know you a little bit about you and something they should know.
I was 56.
You're just a young babe.
Well, I'm old enough to have lived long enough to know what I'm talking about. That's what I mean. And now my mom is almost 80, and so she's got a good 30 years on me. So she's, going to be able to give another perspective. But I will just say that I am old enough to know what I am going to talk about.
Excellent.
And that is, as a wife, as a mother, as a homeschooler, um, I think these things prepared me in a way for what was coming next. I think the Lord's really good about doing that. Is that whatever season you're in, it's not just about the season you're in. It's about the previous season that you planted. And it's also about the seed that's being planted now for later. So I am a wife and mother and grandmother. And I love to sew and, do all the crafty things. But I think that every season of life has been preparing me for the one that I am in now. And so, I don't know. I'm only a pastor's wife because they voted my husband in, and I'm one vote away, one vote and one breath away from not being a pastor's wife, right?
So it's a role, but not an identity.
Yes, but I'll always be a mother. I will always be or have been a wife. And right now I'm a daughter to a living parent, and that has a time expiration on it. And so that's who I am in the season that I'm in right now.
Thank you. I'm glad. And you're my friend. I'm glad you're here. So, this is May and Mother's Day is right around the corner. So I just want to share this because I guess it's on my mind and super real to me right now. But this is my first Mother's Day
Ooh,
without my mom. So, just
yeah,
feeling that, that it's been a few months since, she went to be with the Lord. But here's the truth, Rachel. I was grieving her loss long before she actually passed away. And
sure,
and watching that decline of a parent that, this parent that was strong and loving and laughing and serving the Lord and working in the church, I feel like with her long decline that I've been grieving for a long time, even though at that
sure.
point she was still physically present, you grieve in layers, and that may be something you want to talk about. I
Yeah,
don't know. You grieve what was, you grieve what currently is, and you grieve what will never be again. And all that while you're still loving and caring and they're maybe physically present, but in some other ways, maybe not. And so this is a very personal conversation for me. And for those of our listeners joining this conversation, if you're listening and you start realizing, I think I've been grieving for a long time and my parent is still here. Well, you know what? You're not alone. There are others with you right in that same sorrow. And it's so weird because you're like, well, they're right in front of me, but then the parent I had is not right in front of me. And it's just
that's
so awkward. It's really challenging. But Rachel, when we're talking about that, watching a parent struggle and then they reach a point they're no longer able to care for themselves or live alone. Wow. And I'm kind of different because you're the daughter who mom came to live with you. So I am the daughter who lives far away, right? So I watched my mom decline from it, visiting and from a distance. But the weight of her care was first on my dad for many years, and then he couldn't do it alone. And my sister became them together. And it really began to take a toll on them. I mean, I'm just watching not only my mom's decline, but these people I love that are her caregivers. And then she's requiring even more care than what two people could give her. So, Rachel, if you're comfortable answering this or addressing it, what has caregiving been like for you? Or maybe you want to talk about what you've seen in others, that toll of caregiving.
well, there's probably more than 2 kinds, but the 2 kinds I was familiar with was I watched my sister-in-law, Marla, who is an angel among us. I watched her mother had a stroke, and over a period of years, I watched her wheeling her mother in a wheelchair, so gentle, so tender, um, but they were both gentle, tender people, and so it was difficult physically and emotionally for them, um, but it was also there was a sweetness to it, like a bittersweetness to it. I've also seen on the other side. I saw my other sister-in-law, Bonnie, who is also an angel among us, and her mother was not so sweet and gentle. Her mother, was like a wildcat, fighting tooth and toenail for everything, and we are in no danger of anyone seeing this. Who knows? Who knows her? Uh, and if they did, they would all be agreeing, yes. Um,
Okay.
and so there was no there was no bittersweet. It was just bitter. And so, I can say that, depending on which kind that you are in that, and maybe and there's probably various, other ways to have it too, but, the toll that it takes on someone, being appreciated versus not being appreciated is immense. It's huge. And, the physical can be the same, the financial can be the same, the disappointment can be the same, but where there's a Christ-centered, joy that the caregiver and the person that they're caring for both say, "My life is valuable because God says it is, and I'm gonna find the good in this situation." There's a difference in that and the person that's doing it because of obligation, and being fought all the way through. So, I would say the things that I've seen with caregiving, it's almost like a divorce. A woman who is divorced, but still financially, able to be independent versus the woman who divorces and then is left in poverty.
Right.
It's night and day. uh,
Right.
even though some of the griefs are the same. Man. And so that's the same thing here, I think, with caregiving. And so you don't get to pick what kind of person you're caring for.
No,
You
unfortunately.
you get what you get, and you don't throw a
Right.
fit, right? So what I have found in caregiving is that I am not nearly as Christ-like as I thought I was, and I am not nearly as servant-hearted as I thought I was. Um, I have found out that I love to give when I choose what I get to give, and I love to give too thankful to to something that is, who doesn't want to give to missions and orphans, but when you're called to give out of requirement, and yet it is holy work,
It
you know?
is. It
It's
is.
holy work when you are called to give. People who have a child who's disabled, or a child who has, I think of Denise Wynn, and the grief in her heart and her voice when she talks about putting Aaron, finally coming to the end of what she could do and putting Aaron in a facility of, it's inevitable at some point that you come to the end of what you can do. But what I have found in caregiving is that we get called to this. We didn't choose it.
And
And a lot of things in
yeah,
life we
that
choose. We
grace
didn't
that
choose this.
that grace that is sufficient. That's what we're leaning on.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to something you said, about the attitude of the person you're caring for, because I mean, they could be just a cranky person and they were that way all of their life. And certainly if they're an elder and they're in their last stages, I hardly think that they're going to get convicted and change. But, sometimes it's their health, or it's, like with my mom had Lewy body dementia so they just can't, like, there's things going on, ways they're acting that maybe, like, I would be with my mom times and think, "Oh, man, if she knew, if she realized, oh, this would not be good." But, yeah, you're right, depending on the circumstances and what you find out about yourself. Oh, my word, that is so honest. I appreciate that because I would go and spend a day, like my dad is there day in, day out, and I would be that first day and just sometimes feeling frayed within hours by just the demands and the needs and the behaviors or situations unfolding, in that moment. And I would think, oh my goodness, I'm just here visiting. Was this like day in and day out? So it's
Yeah.
very real. The toll is real. It doesn't make you less Christian. It doesn't mean you don't love Jesus or that person being cared for doesn't love the Lord. But everything comes together in that moment. Personality, situations, pressures of life. Do we have enough help? And then you throw in the illness or whatever caused the person to need
Yeah.
caregiving. And it's just like a bomb ready to blow, isn't it?
Can be.
Oh, it can be. So, we're talking about this, kind of this negative side of it, but I think it has to be addressed. So I'm going to ask you some honest questions and you only talk about what you want to talk about, okay? Um, so would you say that being a caregiver has impacted you emotionally, physically, and spiritually, or none of those, some of those?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes. What Sister Tinny used to say, life is a three-legged stool, physical, emotional, mental. You can't knock one of them off without the others being off kilter, you know? Um, and I don't know. I I guess yes to everything because they all are kind of intertwined.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to separate them. So what are you doing when you does it take a while to wake up and realize maybe you're in a decline or you're on that slippery slope? Like when you're saying, sometimes it's really hard emotionally. Are we talking about just I'm just tired, mentally. I'm just
Yeah.
feeling tired. I don't know what to do. This is a difficult situation. Are you talking about, hey, my back is out and my feet hurt?
Yeah. Well,
What are we dealing with here?
my personality, I do have brain damage. I have brain scans to prove it. Parts of my brains just don't work the way a typical brain should, an optimal brain should. And so part of mine is that I am really great in a crisis. It's almost like I feel no emotion at all. So I'm really good for about a month. for anything. And I'm talking about death and, mayhem and like whatever. I'm
You're the
really good and
woman to call
focused.
in a crisis. Okay.
Really good and focused. Yeah. Um, but it's long term, and especially after about 12 to 18 months, that's when, I start catching up on what everybody else felt when they got the phone call. So it for me, it's all about what's the next step and let's get it done. And that worked really well when mom was they were putting her in hospice basically. She was in a facility, she'd had a stroke and she was dying. She was down under 100 pounds. She couldn't even lift her own head up. And so she was saying things like, just let me die. It's um she was in despair at that point. And, I was determined, no, if she can get better, she will. And so brought her from Houston to here. And over a period of a year, she was up and walking and talking and, never going to be back to her old life. But that when you're in crisis mode, you get a lot of adrenaline. You get a lot of support because everybody's cheering for you and praying for you, and you're still praying that they're going to live or whatever in that. But after the big the fireworks show, what you need is sustainable burn, and that is not my personality, and that's not what I'm good at, and that's not how God designed me. And so what I didn't realize then that I realize now is I should have had some support starting at the 6-month part. But I was still in adrenaline mode to the point that I didn't sleep through the night for about 8 months.
Oh, my
Mom, she
word.
couldn't she couldn't even roll over and use her phone, but she could say, we had it up where I could see her face, and she could say, "Siri, call Rachel." And it would call me and Brent would wake me up, say, "Hey, your phone's ringing." She couldn't even turn herself over in the bed, and she
Yeah.
would be in agony. So I would go turn her over and massage her back and, put on medicine and stuff. So it's like having a newborn, really, for a while. And bathing her and showering her and brushing her teeth and combing her hair, and Brent carried her up and down the stairs. But then, after 8 months or so, now she can do some of that. Her needs changed, but, I guess I was still stuck in parent of an infant mode,
Mhm.
and I didn't let go, and that's when we shoulda got in some outside help at that point. And so I ended up in the hospital. I had, a faux heart attack. In fact, I was in a class at UGST, my 2nd class, and, um, uh I had to drop out of that class. It was horrible. But I ended up in the hospital and the doctor looked at me and said, Mrs. Coltharp, you are going to die if you don't change something. This is your body telling you. Because my blood pressure was like, 224 over 124, and they
Oh,
can't get it down.
Rachel.
Even with medicine, they weren't able to get it down for a while. So he said, you had a stress induced angina. Apparently, that's when your heart will spasm and feels like a heart attack, but no damage. Thank God.
Thank God.
And so he was like, "You gotta do something, or you will die." And that was a turning point for me that came way too long, you know? It could
Mhm.
have just as easily been something else. That happened to be a physical breaking point for me, but sometimes it can be a spiritual breaking point where you're too tired to pray, you're so exhausted, so you give up your Bible reading, you give up your prayer. Now, in my case, I love you, Jesus. You know it's true anyway. In my case, I can't pray and read my Bible because I'm homeschooling my child. It's what we do every day. So, like I'm locked in.
Mhm.
Um, that's not to say that if that hadn't been there, what if that had been what I gave up
Right, right.
instead of giving up, instead of with my physical health. So some people can actually leave the Lord because they give up their daily disciplines. So that's what I found in caregiving is, the whole cliche of put your own mask first on before you help, the person beside you on the plane is nobody's going to take care of you but you. Nobody can take care of you but you. And so if you sacrifice taking care of you to take care of them, then it could be that two people die,
Yeah. And
you
that's
know?
that's very real. And going back to what you said about the spiritual aspect of it, one of the things I think that people face is if they're kind of in that I'm locked in, like my dad was unable to go to church because my mom couldn't be left alone, and so they start feeling this isolation, then you're not going to church, you don't have the support of the body of Christ around you, and in our case, after a few years, people forget. They get used to not seeing you at church, new people come, situations are
Yeah.
going on, and if it's not their life, it's like, "Oh, we haven't seen them in a while," "Oh, I hope they're okay," but people do, and no judgment, anything, but people can get isolated and maybe still deeply love the Lord, but they're not getting spiritually nourished in their isolation. So there's that disconnect. So when you had this faux heart attack, which sounds extremely scary, and I actually remember when that was going on, but um what came out of this? So you came away and it's like, okay, if I die, that's not gonna help my family, that's not gonna help my mom. So, what did you do? Did you say, "I've gotta make a plan, I've gotta put some things in place"? What was the next thing for Rachel? So, you're good in a crisis, so what did you do?
Um, well, so my mother is feisty and always has been. Her mother, my grandmother, would tell us stories about she knew if mom had been in a fight coming home from school because the sashes would be tore off her dress. So my mom's always been, real feisty. That didn't change. um, but you add feisty to loss and grief. Um, now sh- now she's just got a whole lot going on. And here's what I realized with all that mom's got going on: there's only so much I can handle. I can take care of, you have lights, you have electricity, you have water, and I can drive you back and forth to the doctor. I cannot take care of emotional, mental health. That's going to have to be between you and your doctor.
Right.
I can't take responsibility for that anymore. And that's what I was micromanaging, I guess you suppose. I'm counting every pill. I'm making sure she took every little thing. And so I had taken on more than what I can handle. And I would say this very, I wish somebody told me this. And maybe somebody did. I don't know. But when you when you come to the place where you cannot carry, if God has not equipped you to carry the load,
Mhm.
then the load is not for you.
Good point.
Because God will give you enough strength to carry it. So when it gets so heavy that you cannot carry it, that means you've come to the end of your limits. Now it's time for somebody else: a doctor, a
Mhm.
lawyer,
Mhm.
respite care, a nursing home.
Mhm.
I think I made an idol out of. I think I made an idol out of. I can get what I want, which is reconciliation and uh, wholeness. If I try hard enough, I can make this happen. Um, and you can't. And I couldn't. So long convoluted answer, but what did I do after that faux heart attack? I came home and said, "Here are the things I can't handle anymore. We will hire somebody to do these other things." And in my case, we had a come to Jesus meeting and said, if these steps are not followed, we will need to find another place to live. And that was hard for her, and that was hard for me. But I can't. I have a 15-year-old. Well, he's 16. I have a 16-year-old son that needs a mother to get him through. I have a daughter who's pregnant and has her own health issues. Is that I have more than one responsibility. And I have a husband that likes to have, food every once in a while, and
The
he would like
basics
to
of
be
life.
he'd like to be able to get to the house without tripping over, stuff. Is that I don't just have one role and one responsibility, but that one consumed us. It consumed our whole lives for 3 years. We're going on year 4 now. So, I think I'm making healthier boundaries, and it's actually worked out really well. If I had done that before, I might not would have gotten to that place. Because the
Mhm.
problem wasn't mom. The problem was me, how I was insistent on managing it my way. Sometimes you have to let
Yeah.
people hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. And we need to let them carry what they can carry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think the root of it was what you mentioned, and we don't have to talk about you personally there, but I do think that for adults and their parents come back into their life in such a close living in the same home relationship, whatever has not been as strong as we wanted or clear as we wanted or loving as we wanted it. And it just changes when you're an adult and you've lived years away from your parent. It's just different. But we do, I probably and we just have it's just so mixed up, Rachel, around it because, they're our parent always, but then now we're parenting, or caring for the one who cared for us. And and then there's maybe some hurts, maybe some unresolved issues. So for all of our listeners, you're listening in, oh, I wish you were at the table with us because the stories we could share, you know. But Rachel, what you said was so powerful because you bring them into your home, because you love and care, isn't going to cause them to feel differently, think differently, be different about certain things, and however listeners can translate that into their own life. If relationships were sticky before, they're going to be sticky after. But certainly allowing God to do the work that only God can do, that healing that comes when, we say, Lord, use me to love my parent well. So I really thank you for sharing that. Um, and that really kind of, brought us into that idea. We you do have to think about, and maybe most of the people who are in caregiving already didn't think about it, but, how do you hold boundaries without feeling like you're unloving or you're not spiritual? How do you do that?
Uh, well, I wish I'd done it better with my kids. If I had a do-over, I think I'd get a do-over with my grandkids. But um, I think it's always the right thing to do the right thing is something I have to, say to myself is that take emotion out of it, take the personalities out of it, take that it's me and dad or me and mom or, out of it and say, what is the right thing to do? And then make it about the right thing, not about, um, I knew a family one time that the son was quadriplegic and he would cuss his mom. He would just curse her and be so cruel to her. This man's in his 30s. And she finally started picking his hand up and just she'd pick his hand up and leave it. And it would come down and smack himself in the face. And and it would just make him so mad. And she said, I can't smack him because I wouldn't feel good about it. But when bad words come out of his mouth that are hurtful and hateful, I can let him smack himself.
That's
And
cute.
and I'm like, I was a teenager at the time, and I was like,
Mhm.
she's a genius, man. That woman is smart. Um, but the better I think she should have washed his mouth out with soap,
Yeah.
personally, that's what I think, but, the thing is that when they are behaving in a way that is unacceptable, you can say, "That behavior is unacceptable," not, "You are unacceptable," not, "You're
Mhm.
not gonna treat me that way," and, "How dare you, treat me that way after all I've
Mhm.
done for you." It's, "That behavior is unacceptable. We won't have that behavior here." Or I will not stay in a relationship where that behavior is. If you can make it about the thing or the principle and not about the people.
Right, right.
So
That's
I think
hard.
it is hard. It is hard. And I had to be really careful um that mine wasn't a get back kind of thing of, "Oh, I'm in charge now." You know? I had to
Yeah.
really search my motives and search my heart because, we did have a we my mother and I do have a lot of old issues. I was not an easy child to raise. Let me start off by saying that. I probably put that woman through hell and high water because I'm telling you, I was not an easy child to raise, not an easy teenager to raise. And there were some things that I thought were harsh on her end from my younger days. And so I knew that going into this caregiving thing, and that was one of the things that I prayed about was, Lord, help me to have a pure heart.
Right.
Help me to make sure that I'm doing this, out of pure motive and because you don't know what's in your own heart. And I've never wanted to hurt my mother. I've never wanted to, be cruel or mean to her. But when you're in a position of power, and I see this in parents parents with their children, sometimes they'll be cruel to their kids, because they can.
because they
And
can.
so because it can and so I that was one thing I did pray before we ever brought her into the house was, "Lord, help me to not ever be cruel." And, because I knew it was gonna be hard, I didn't know how hard it was gonna be, but, I knew that when I was on the getting end, let me just say it that way, when I was on the getting end of some cruel, hard words, I wanted to make sure that I didn't give them back
Right.
because I
Right.
could.
Well, I think what we're just really sharing honestly is that this is very hard work to do. But not that we shouldn't. We absolutely we're called to care for our parents and honor and love them. But it also is we're allowed to have those boundaries, and I think it takes the Lord, at least in my journey with my mom and working with my sister and my dad around that, it's just like, wow, I felt like I prayed so much about everything because everything felt emotional. It all
Yeah.
felt mentally draining. I knew it was physically draining for my sister and dad every single day, and it just feels like it's just so intense. So I wanna move to this. So you have multiple roles. You're homeschooling mom, pastor's wife. You have your own ministries. You have ministry responsibilities at the church. So how does this caregiving that you do intersect with meeting expectations of others who want your time and attention?
Well, I am the most fortunate woman, I should say blessed woman on the planet in that, um, we have a ladies director, we have somebody takes care of everything at the church. Honest to goodness, I am so blessed. I get to show up and smile and wave, and I can wash dishes, but I don't have to plan anything. And my father-in-law in his wisdom had set that up way back, a gazillion years ago when they took the church of training up people to do that kind of stuff. I actually have 0 responsibility at our church. I do teach the hyphen class, um, and I'm a pothole singer, so if there's a hole in the, music team and they're all out, I can sing if they need me. Um, no one is depending on me except for Wednesday nights,
Good.
for, hyphen. So really, I didn't leave a big hole. But for about a year, I wasn't able to attend service. Me and at that time, he was 12 or 13. We took turns staying home with mom.
Mhm.
Um, and so about half of the services, I was not there for that first year. And everyone was so kind and so wonderful. They offered to come and help, but mom wasn't comfortable with they were strangers to her,
Right.
and she was in such a vulnerable place at that point, totally helpless. Um, but I didn't go anywhere for about a year and a half, maybe or so, traveling. I didn't, and here's you know how things are. You get booked 2 years out, right, for
Right.
things because people
Yeah.
plan that far in advance. I had, this period of time, I only had to cancel a few things, but it was almost like the Lord had set it up ahead of time
He knew.
of Yes!
Mhm.
Yes! Of normally, because there's certain ladies conferences that are all in the same, several conferences are all in the same date. Um, and I hadn't even really paid attention to that until I started feeling like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to start canceling," and then looking ahead to see, it was like, the Lord in his goodness, I had
Yeah.
stuff 2 years out, you
Yeah.
know, but, for that first, like, 18 months or so, I only had to cancel a few things, which I felt terrible about, but, um, I mean, every day it was we don't know if she's gonna live till the morning. I mean,
Right.
it could have been, uh, it could have been, we
Yeah.
lived every
Yeah.
day of knowing, is my son gonna find her in the morning? So I gotta get up, make sure I get up before he does, I mean,
Yeah.
so it was, um,
That's a lot of stress. That's a lot of pressure.
yeah,
It's hard. I'm thankful the Lord is more organized than I am because He does order our steps and He does set up our calendars for us.
yeah,
Um, so let's talk about spiritually. Let's talk about things between you and God because this does have an impact. I mean, everything we go through, every trial, every testing, every circumstance of life, the sufferings, you know, have an impact on us. So do you feel like it has stretched you? do you want to talk about the wrestling? I love that. How you wrestled and were stretched. But, how have you found God to be real, and maybe in unique ways that are you would have to really be practicing noticing in order to say, wow, that was God. God has certainly been with me in the moments.
Um, well, the fact that I didn't die is one of them. Could have been a
Yes.
very, very easily could have been a real heart attack. Um, uh, I see growth in some of the things that I prayed for in my children have grown and sprouted during this season. And not because of me, but because of what they're seeing with me and mom. So my teenager, so mom's been here going on 4 years and he's 16 now. So that makes him what, 14, I guess. 13, 14. Rachel math is not good. His experience with his grandmother is completely different than the others. So he'll go down, he'd do his Bible reading sometimes down there. And he came up to me one day and put his arm around me and he said, Mom, I see what you're doing for Nana, and I see that it's hard. And I'm really proud of you. And he's had this experience. The big kids were all together in their teenage years. He's been alone because his brothers and sisters were all gone off to college. And so God has planted stuff in my son during this time, a nurturing spirit, a care. He is so good to her. He carries out her trash and,
No.
they go play chess together and they kind of have this sweet relationship, even though he can see the hard. So he can
Right.
see it. And it has helped him see things in his teenage self of when his emotions are riled up and how he sometimes maybe would feel about me, but seeing how we care for her in her tumultuous times
Right.
has really so I think I see God in what's happened in my teenager. Um
And that means the
and
world. If
oh my goodness, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
Um, it has also given my mother an opportunity to go to church. Where she was before, because of health issues and stuff, she wasn't able to go to church very often. And so here, back when I was taking her to church, I would, take her now that she's a little more independent. She does go when it's not really cold and she's not afraid of falling. We only live half a mile from the church.
Right.
So she will drive herself sometimes to the church if she's up for it. But like for mostly this whole winter, she can't go to church. So
Mhm.
she watches online. But I think I've seen God give my mother this um, spiritual growth opportunity that she wouldn't have had any other way, I don't think. Um, and um, and I've just seen the goodness of God in my own life in revealing my heart. I mean, it's a horrible thing to look in the mirror and realize there's ugly in here.
I
You know,
know, but it's
uh,
there, isn't it?
oh, there it is. And rears its ugly head.
Yeah, it's real.
I think what I said earlier was, I thought I had this great servant's heart, and I realized, no, I thought I had a great servant's heart because I was able to serve in the things that appealed to me. Oh yeah, I love teenagers. Oh yeah, I love kids. Oh yeah, I love college age students. Yeah, let me serve. Um, and really, I guess a servant gets told what to do. They don't really
Yeah.
get to pick it. And so I've realized that my heart was not nearly as pure as I thought it was. And
I think that's all of us, Rachel. We're all a
oh
little bit
man.
in denial about who we really are,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and even facing end of life for myself, this has really brought into sharp focus for me. What kind of elderly person do I want to be?
Mm. Yeah, good
And
point.
what can I do right now to set up that harvest? What seeds do I need to plant right now to
Mhm.
set up that harvest? I will say this: I've never been a saver. My husband is, thank God,
Mhm.
he's in charge of the money. But my mother was very diligent in her finances. She was a single school teacher, and so I think I think that has been a lesson to me of seeing the good seed that my mother had planted and how it paid off for her. Has been beneficial. The Lord has spoken to me through my mother's life,
Mhm.
and seeing things that I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have thought was so valuable at the time, and now I'm like, "Woo, I better
Yeah.
do that. Thank God
Yeah.
mama did that," you know?
So a lot of learning
Oh,
as well
yeah.
as just spiritually growing, learning in the natural, just some basic things about I want to end well. And that,
Yeah.
that's one of my prayers for end of life is, Lord, I want to end well. When you're young, of course, naturally, you don't think about endings. When you start getting older and your parents are struggling, and then you actually begin to lose your parents in old age, then you think, "Oh, wow, Lord, what is that gonna be when my time comes and I want to end well?"
Yeah.
I wanna get into a topic that's a little touchy, like none of the other questions have been, right? I just wanna get I just wanna get into something. So, uh, excuse me. I wanna share this from my own story. Like I said, I was the daughter who lived far away. But I very much wanted to be involved in my mom's care. I mean, it's my mom, I love her. So I had to learn something the hard way. And that was the best way I could love my mom and support her was to support my dad and my sister and their caregiving of her. So, I had a lot of ideas and, and I wanted to
Sure.
offer those ideas and I wanted to be helpful. But so, sometimes when we offer help, that could imply that we think somebody's doing it the wrong way, and it's not so much like I really felt like, oh, I know everything about caregiving. I knew I didn't, but I felt so guilty about not being present every single day, not helping put her to bed at night, not, doing all the things they were doing. So, I was had suggestions and ideas and advice and all kinds of things. Well, what I learned, and I don't know, maybe this speaks to you, maybe it doesn't. What I learned was I needed to affirm the people carrying the load, not tell them how to do their job better. I needed, one of my favorite um, things to say to a person who's struggling. And then I realized I'm not even saying this to my own family was, what can I do to better support you during this time? And I wasn't even, asking that question. I was doing the supporting, in my own way. So anybody can be a perfect caregiver from a distance or for a day, right? And I was. But realizing, so to all of you who are like me, live far away, you're not there all the time, you feel horribly guilty. You're just going to have to relax. This is my advice from the other side. That it's just imperfect people doing their best in a less than ideal situation. So, to follow up with that, what would you feel like you would like to say to caregivers or to not caregivers, but to family members of caregivers they love deeply, they're not present. What do they need to understand about not being present but loving? How do
Yeah.
we say this in a sweet way?
Uh, yeah. Um, I'm very blessed, because I called my sister-in-law, Marla, who's married to my brother, Aaron, and, um, and because she went through it with her mom, and so I do talk to her and say, "Hey, this is what I'm struggling with. What do you think, yay or nay?" And I try to come to a consensus with her of to get an outside set of eyes, because sometimes you're so caught in it, you can't see the forest for the trees, if that makes sense. And
Right.
so I would say first, let me say for the caregiver is that maybe sometimes asking because you may be so overwhelmed that you can't even see something an outsider could see. We all have blind spots. For an outsider, I would say if you see something they could be doing better, um, to couch it with instead of saying you should do this, to maybe to say, I was wondering what you would think about, and
Mhm.
just floating it as an idea rather than a solution, you
Mhm.
know, which Marla has never done, by the way. She's the least bossy person in the world. Um, but I do value her input, on things because I realize I have blind spots. Uh, if you want to help, hire somebody to come clean their house.
Right. Good idea.
If you want to, help, pay $99 for the Walmart, free grocery delivery.
Yeah.
If you want find very practical ways to lighten the load of the caregiver that will just give them, an extra 40 minutes, grocery, however long grocery shopping takes. Send them a gift card to go out and eat.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying that for me in my situation
Right.
because I'd rather burn my house down right now than let somebody come in and try to clean it. I'm telling you the truth. Don't touch my stuff. You know, uh, I got a little chaos going on here, but I know that we do hire someone to clean moms. Actually, it's part of her. Again, mom being wise and having good insurance. Part of mom's insurance is that someone does come in, for a couple hours, and so uh, w- we have them clean her spot down there.
Mhm.
So, but anything that can be helpful, if they, I don't know, maybe with those HelloFresh things, or have meals delivered or
Mhm.
something, um, because sometimes it's just that the regular load of life doesn't go away just because you've taken on the new load,
No, no,
and
it's there, very
it's
present,
still waiting on you.
and probably if people listening are like your life and mine, it's already packed. Every nook and cranny corner of life is filled up, and then, to take on someone else's life, but your real life doesn't go away because of it. So, yeah, it is really figuring out all those things and being willing to allow people in, you
Yeah,
know. One of my great ideas to help my dad was I wanted to hire people to help in the home. And I thought, this is just going to be the greatest solution. Wow, dad, clap and cheer. I am hiring people to come in. But then to have to hear, I don't want anybody in my house. I don't want this to happen, because he felt like while she was sleeping, he could at least, relax. But if somebody's scheduled to be there, whatever, he had his things going on. Well, here I thought I was being so helpful, but little things like what you said, like hire somebody. It's okay if somebody comes in for 2 hours and cleans. He was good at that. So really being willing, but negotiating and working through what is that person able to handle in the moment. Maybe their nerves are just frayed from caregiving, and they know, like, this is the thing that would just ruin my day, but I can take this little bit of help, or I can take this help, but not all these other grand ideas you have.
yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
respite care, I would say check with your county because some counties have respite care. What that means is that you can drop grandma off for 2 hours, and she can make quilt squares,
Mhm.
or, make cards with, it's like a supervised kind of
Yeah.
thing, so that you can just go sit in the parking lot and cry, if you
Right.
need to, or go to the
Right.
grocery store or whatever. But also find respite care. There are these, it's not a nursing home, but think of it as a assisted living where
Mhm.
someone can go and stay for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, a month,
Mhm.
and there is a nurse on call. There is their laundry's taken care of. And not everyone can afford that. I understand that. Um, but man, don't stroke out.
Right. Where you can get help, you've got to at least be willing to receive it, and like you said, we've got to find the resources. We've got to figure out what's really going to work. And I think being willing to ask for help. I think sometimes, what I saw is that sense of getting lost in caregiving, and it just went on for so long. And I think not even having enough breath to ask for the help they needed, to say, wow, and then just seeing them declining and knowing I need to do something. So I want to reframe Matthew 11:28 for caregivers. So it reads like this: Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Rachel, we know this for most caregivers who have someone right now, like you said, that first year, you couldn't even go to church. So this rest isn't going to mean a weekend away for many of our listeners.
Oh,
It's not going to mean a legitimate break from responsibility or a whole season without demands. So what do you do when caregiving means that you're tired and you desperately need to sleep, but you're getting up all night, you never have a full night's sleep? or you're sick and you just need to be in bed for 3 days, but someone is depending on you. Help us think through, what does "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." What do you think that means?
Well, I believe that's followed by "My yoke is easy, come and learn of me."
Yeah.
Um, I think the "come and learn of me" part, it's easy to say, "Oh, I'm just gonna give it all over to God. Oh, I just handed it to him and the flu went away," or just handed it to him
Don't, we
and
wish.
someone took care of, the checking the blood
Mhm.
glucose levels, I think it's "come and learn of me, for I am lowly and meek of heart." Um, and I think I could be confused, but I think those 2 go together.
Well,
I
yeah, just that
I
whole sense of, first of all, we have to come.
yeah,
We have to
is
come
that
to him.
the whole meek and lowly part is that, Christ came to serve,
Mhm.
and, if I'm called to this, if I'm that's a really important part. If I'm called to this season of serving, because if I have called myself to it, I don't know that I have his promise that he'll be with me. If I have taken on a yoke that is not his and a burden that is not his, and I
Mhm.
just took it on myself, um, well, good luck, sister. Handle that one on your own.
Yeah, you'll have to
But
carry the weight of it.
yes,
Mhm.
because not every caregiver is following Christ,
Mhm.
and not every caregiver is um, has that promise. I would say that's a promise for believers.
Yeah, I
And so,
agree.
I think the rest for believers comes, it has to be spiritual rest. It's not necessarily physical rest. I mean, he gives his beloved rest, in his sleep, yes, but there are seasons where you are going to grieve and ache. And I think for me, the hope is that this is a temporary season,
Mhm.
is part of it, is that even, there's the scripture that says Christ endured the cross, he despised the shame of it.
Yeah.
That tells me he hated the season,
Mhm.
but he endured it for the glory that was set before him. Is that this is, at least in our case, for mom and for me, she knows this is a temporary season, and she looks forward to eternity.
Right.
um
That we have more
um
ahead.
yes, and but not everybody has that. So I guess for me, it has to be that the Lord's burden is light, but this is a consequence of sin. Is that God didn't make us to grow old and feeble and lose our faculties and rely on medication. This is a product of the fall. And
Right.
so caregiving is not God's plan. It's not his plan A. Plan A is that you don't ever grow
That we wouldn't
sick
need
or
it.
old. Exactly. And so it's plan B. It's
Yeah.
since you're here, now what?
Mhm.
And I think just relying on, Lord, you know how much I can handle. And you've promised that if I'm obedient to your word and walking with you, nothing will come that's too much for me. So when it gets to be too much, that means it's not for me anymore.
Well, there definitely that stop. There are stopping points into every day. The day starts, the day ends, and we have to have these rhythms. But I think what you said, we have to come. So that means I have to stop and say, wait a minute, I need to go to the Lord, because you know what? Being strengthened doesn't always mean I'm going to be relieved of the responsibility. But but I know, and I know you've had this experience, there are things that happen in the presence of the Lord
Right.
that my thinking has changed. I just come out of it with a different focus, a different understanding, and I am strengthened, but it
Yes.
wouldn't make sense. There's no real explanation for, like, I didn't get an 8-hour nap, I didn't take the right kind of vitamins or whatever, and all of a sudden, it is something that is definitely rooted in grace. It is him giving us grace for the day. So I think that we just have to remind ourselves, like, if we're going to walk this path and the Lord has called us to walk this path, we shouldn't be doing it without him. Not only do we need the body of Christ around us, and we need supportive family members and friends around us, you're going to need the Lord. We all need the Lord in all of it. So we're
For
coming to
sure.
the end, and I know we've been talking for a while, but what so if there's anything you've wanted to say and we didn't get to, but what is something that you wish you had known early on, or something that you would say to a caregiver who feels like they're failing?
Oh, wow. Well, don't try to do it by yourself. Um, you're probably not strong enough. If you feel like you're not strong enough, you're probably right. There's a reason that there's teams in a hospital. There's teams of caregivers.
Yeah.
The nurse does one thing, the janitor does one thing, the doctor does one thing, and the caregiver's doing it all. Um,
Yeah, you can't be the whole team. I
don't
mean, you
don't
may
try to
be
do it.
for a season, but not forever.
Yeah. I would say you need to check into legal help because you need to check with the government on the government agency for the aged, because there's some really good programs. You may qualify to have someone that comes in and does assessments so that they can get transportation, especially if you're in a situation you need ambulance transportation. Um, Seek all the resources that you can, because there are legal and medical and social resources that you probably aren't aware of if you haven't been through this journey before. Also, ask for help from your family and friends. People will come up and say, "Well, if there's anything I can do to help," and at the moment you kind of can't think of it, make a list.
Oh, I
you
agree.
know,
Absolutely. Keep it with you
make
at
a
all
list.
times.
If you are the one who's mowing your own lawn, maybe there's a teenager that
Mhm.
could mow the lawn, and or if you're the one again with the grocery thing, it would be great to have somebody who either picks up groceries for you, or you use the Walmart.
Mhm.
That's like the best thing ever.
Yeah,
I'm
have it
telling you that
delivered.
Walmart delivery is awesome. Um, and I would say you need to schedule time to be away.
Mhm.
And if that can only be 2 hours a week, you know, schedule 2 hours a week. Have a
Right.
neighbor come over and sit with them. Uh, you need to have time to think your own thoughts
Yeah.
and to
Be
get
in
outside of the house
Yeah, be in a
and see
different
there's another
space.
world. Yep.
Yes. Not
Yep.
get so isolated and lose contact with the real world.
And if someone will come and stay with your loved one so that you can go to church, even if it's once a month,
Yeah,
do it. You need to be in the room feeling the feel. A
absolutely.
screen is great, but it's plan C,
Yeah, that's
you know.
right. That's
Um,
right. There's nothing like being in the room with the body of Christ in
yes.
the presence of the
Yeah.
Lord. It's amazing.
And we have these once a month prayer meetings at the church on a Tuesday night. And I will go into those prayer meetings. I remember just being like barely able to drag. Well, they say I was as low as a pregnant worm. I mean, like I was dragging, and and leaving feeling like I'd had 6 months of sleep.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't explain that. There is no
No.
way to explain that. Um, so I guess I would say to myself, check out your resources and get some help, um, and be a friend to yourself.
Yes.
Take the advice you would give somebody else.
I like that. Yeah, caregiving is about honoring our parents, certainly, honoring God, but honoring does not require martyrdom. I don't think that's what God is calling us to. Um, you're allowed to need help. You're allowed to need to rest and have your rest. And God's going to be faithful to you. And even on the days you feel empty, there is a place of restoration. If you can just take a few minutes somewhere in your home, find that quiet space and just cry out to the Lord, Lord, I need you. I know He is faithful to show up. Well, thank you, Rachel. Did you want to say one more thing?
I'm gonna say I absolutely I was assuming that was kind of a given, but let me just say it in case that wasn't a given. If I didn't have daily prayer and Bible reading, there is no way that I could get through. Well,
Mm-hmm.
life in general, but I
Yeah.
had that practice in place before I got here.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this, sometimes it's the prayers you pray before the crisis that help get you through the
Mm-hmm.
crisis. It's the times you're laying on your face before you get to the place where you've been knocked on your face. And so if you're
So
listening to this
true.
today and you don't have a steady prayer life, or you're not in the word daily, I want to say buckle up, baby, because you're going
Yeah.
to have a time when when you desperately, you need it now, but you will desperately need it another time maybe.
Yeah.
Is that start a practice now. And if you don't have a practice now and you are a caregiver, maybe start doing that with the person
I
that
like that. Yeah.
reading the word together, talking about the sermon together. When I come home from church now, mom will talk about, the sermon and, talk about the service and it's a shared experience, even though she's not physically in that
Mm-hmm.
room because she can't be in the cold. But, yeah, maybe implement some spiritual practices with the person you're caregiving with.
Well, that's really good. And sometimes we just lose sight of that because we're so lost in the daily practical care. We forget, hey, you know what? We both need the Lord. We both need that uplifting of our spirit that comes through being in his presence and speaking
Yes.
life words through his words.
Right.
Oh, that's excellent. So thank you all. Thank you most of all, Rachel, for joining us. And thank you for listeners for joining in on this conversation. Um, I know that, Rachel, this might not have always been the most comfortable, my questions and asking you to share your heart, but this was a very important conversation that we need to have, and I'm sure that others are glad they could be a part of today. So listeners, if this episode was meaningful to you, please do share it with someone else. And here's my
Yes.
challenge for all of us this week. And it's simple. Don't panic. Pay attention to the caregivers in your life. Show up with practical help. Offer help that lightens their load, not advice that adds to it. So let's just think about that. I want you to get someone in your mind right now. They're a caregiver, and you just set up that Walmart delivery so they can get their groceries delivered at home. Or some of these practical helps that Rachel's already gone over. Just go ahead and make that decision. I'm going to be that person. I'm going to not just say, call me if you need me. I'm going to actually show up and offer real help. If you are the caregiver, remember, give yourself the same grace you give others. The Lord sees you as you labor in love. And I want to say happy Mother's Day to all the women who love, nurture, and pour themselves into the lives of others. And until next time, God bless you. Take care.